Welcome. This is the Election Panel 2024 video for my channel, Lunatic Astrology. My name is Lori Lothian. I am so excited to introduce you to some amazing astrological analysis in the video ahead with a panel, including what I might have to say about who may or may not win the election in 2024 on November the 5th. We have on our panel today the esteemed S.J. Anderson. You'll find out a lot more about him if you go check his channel out. Links are below in the description box, as well as Astrocuties, Reena from Astrocuties. That's her YouTube channel, and she is an amazing up-and-coming young astrologer, and I was blown away by the research she did that shows exactly who and why and where and when somebody might win the election. She has done some amazing original research on the Saros cycles and the eclipses, and we're also going to hear from Erika LeNormand, of the LeNormand tarot deck creator and author. She also has been surprising me as I watch her Substack articles and her channel, seeing how many of her predictions around things that have been occurring around the election buildup have been deadly accurate. So we're bringing her aboard as well today. I'm going to start off this particular panel by just sharing my thoughts on Kamala Harris and Donald Trump's solar arc time. This is a tool in astrology that I haven't shared here with their charts on my channel. So we're going to do this with the understanding that this is not politics. This is astrology. Astrology is a predictive or forecasting tool, or you can call it a divination tool. And in that spirit of divination, we're looking at the sky for who may win the USA election. This is not my opinion. This is not my political preference. Indeed, I am Canadian, and I don't even vote in the United States of America. And I'm particularly apolitical in general. So when it comes to what we're doing today, don't get angry in the comments and troll the me or the presenters of this content. We're simply looking at the sky stories and what they may forecast for this election. And I'm really excited to have you see what Reena and S.J. Anderson have come up astrologically. It's the methods they use to determine the outcome that I wanted to introduce you to. And that's why I'm sharing today my opinion on what we call solar arc time to get us started before we go ahead to the panel discussion itself. This is the chart of Donald Trump. I'm only going to spend, guys, about hopefully no more than 10 minutes on my section so we can get to my guests. But I want you to know what my thoughts are as well. This is Donald Trump's natal chart, and we want to put over this chart what we call the solar arc directions. This is the planets moving around the sky approximately a degree a year from the time of birth. For example, you'll see his midheaven when he was born is at 24 degrees of Taurus and has now migrated in solar arc direction time to 9 degrees of Leo. What concerns me most about this chart is the obvious nature of what might happen when midheaven, his career point, reaches Pluto, death. And now, basically, the midheaven isn't only about our career, it is also about the vault of heaven where we may ascend to heaven upon death. It's knock, knock, knocking on heaven's door. He has almost been assassinated one time, and maybe a second time with the golf courses in it, but nothing came of it. We can see that perhaps with this midheaven connecting with his natal Pluto, he is more than just in a career death, but he may also still be physically in harm's way. The midheaven at 9 degrees and 16 minutes by solar arc transit is over that Pluto at 10 degrees and 2 minutes, indicating even over the next 12 months, he is still physically in harm's way, or that his career is undergoing a death and rebirth energy. Now, also, you'll notice in Donald Trump's chart in solar arc time, as every planet has migrated around the wheel, that we have some interesting other placements. Let's just bring up a couple of thoughts I have about them. When he was born, he experienced a moon in his fifth house on Shala, the stinger for poison on the tail of the Scorpion. And by the way, that is why he's also quite prone to scandals to do with sex, because it's in the house of sex and romance where the stinger's tail continually stings him, but it can also represent poisoning as well. I'm not happy to see Neptune in solar arc time coming onto the stinger of Scorpio's Shala, the star, the tail of the scorpion stinger that sits on his moon south node at birth, and that Neptune rules drugs and poisons as well. This means that, again, what could be going on for him doesn't look good. He has had a poisoning attempts in the past by people causing harm to him. He's not new to this particular threat. So again, I bring this up because the moon represents the life force energy that animates the body. And although he was born with the asteroid angel on his moon at the time of birth, and at the time of the first assassination attempt, he had the asteroid angel crossing his ascendant, it doesn't mean that this asteroid prevents him ultimately from harm's way. So we must keep in mind that he looks to me like he might be in significant harm's way still as we approach the election. And my big question about Donald Trump is, will he even be on the ballot, or will be in some kind of hospital situation for ostensibly a health issue? Whether it's foul play or not, I cannot possibly say. Now, I want to do one more thing in this chart, and I'm going to draw another chart on the outer circle. And that outer chart is called the solar return of the United States on its July 4th, 2024 birthday. And I'm going to ask myself, how does that solar return chart of the USA dovetail with Donald Trump's natal sky and his solar arc placements that I have already highlighted for you, the ones that are giving me pause? Don't forget, we have his midheaven up on the fixed star Algol for the demon's head, but also decapitation and also losing one's head. It was when Mars and Uranus co-join on his midheaven that he experienced the bullet that whizzed by his ear. And Uranus and Mars together on his midheaven is a hundreds of year rare event. But even just Uranus up there is an event that we're going to see only once every 84 years. And it is around the 14th to the 20th of the month of October that we're going to see Uranus back in the place it was when Donald Trump experienced the bullet whizzing by his ear. Not with Mars, but still it is Uranus on his midheaven. Let's take the outer wheel and move the chart into the display for you of the USA solar return on the outside wheel. You'll notice on the solar return outside wheel, we're looking for anything that could cause difficulty to him and his career path. Well, in the United States solar return chart, and the United States in its solar return ascendant is a Scorpio rising. And then you might also see there's the United States natal ascendant in the year of 2024 to 25, July to July. That also we see that the progressed ascendant of Donald Trump is also now in Scorpio. And there's quite the alignment between his identity and the identity of the nation of the USA in this particular election year. But however, it is not a positive sign to see that the IC, the midnight hour of the sky, is aligned with Donald Trump's progressed ascendant and the ascendant of the United States. This is not a place of superior power. Also causing a lot of challenge for Donald Trump is the fact that in the United States 7th house of open enemies, only in the solar return chart, are the Mars and Uranus placements, and they are over Donald Trump's midheaven. Now, Mars is cutting, ending, severing. Uranus is shock and surprise. Midheaven is career or the vault of heaven. Again, we already saw the assassination attempt, and that may be all that this is delineating. But your Mars, Uranus coming over that midheaven baked into the USA solar return in the house of open enemies for the United States means the United States may see Donald Trump as an open enemy. I know the existential fight for democracy. Yeah, I get it. But that's exactly one of the things to say. Which part of the United States identity would identify Donald Trump as an open enemy? Well, it would be the characteristic of a Scorpio ascendant in this year of the solar return of USA. What is a Scorpio? It is the three-letter agencies. It is the deep state. It is the stealthy and secretive elements of power. And they are seeing him and his career and everything about him as something they need to maybe Mars, cut and sever, eliminate. So just keep that in mind. I do see that story as being, I'm not pro-Trump, anti-Trump. I'm not pro-Biden, anti-Biden. I'm pro-Kamala. I'm just saying this chart looks suspiciously like the state itself is out to get him. Okay. It looks like that in this chart. Ooh, now moving on, and I'm afraid of a martyr complex. Donald Trump was born with the Vestal flame of devotion in the house of death, and we had Neptune. And what we get in the USA solar return chart is the possibility of this amplification of his sacred devotional flame in his natal sky, Trump, being activated like a big lighter by Neptune, which speaks to martyrdom and martyr type stories. And of course, when we get Athena here, we get things like books about Donald Trump and of course, movies about Trump, which just came out. But with Neptune, you get the savior martyr complex story. And that Neptune traveling through the solar return chart of the United States of America happens to fall in the United States of America's fifth house of celebrities and fame and entertainers. And at this point, it looks like if anything bad happens to him, he will become basically like an MLK or something, a martyr hero complex story around his fight for, America and MAGA and all of that stuff. Now, we're going to clear that. I'm going to take a quick look as we clear the drawings, clear all drawings at Kamala Harris in the same vein that we just looked at for Donald Trump. So let's add Kamala to the top of the list. Please, Kamala Harris, be here. You are. Yeah, Kamala. Let's remove that and put Kamala Harris's directed solar arcs in place. And let's just look at that alone before I add the USA chart to the outside wheel. I hope I'm not going too fast for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new to my channel. I do have an election playlist, and I did declare Walsh would be the winner and that Biden would step down. I have a good track record here, so let's keep going. Kamala Harris, directed solar arc on the outside. What is good? What is bad? What is not so great? Well, it isn't too shabby that she has her 27-degree moon here, which will, by the way, be involved in a bit of a intensity with the Aries full moon that's coming up in April on the 17th, but we have a video coming out for that. And we have Saturn in solar arc time moving from 28 degrees of Aquarius to 28 degrees of Aries. Now, let me say something about that. My experience astrologically with my clients is this is positive because the sextile relationship between Saturn and dignity, promising her great authority and power close to that midheaven, but out of sign, is now in a sextile to its natal position. All things to do with perseverance, discipline, hard work, authority, power in the top of the sky come into easier fruition in this sextile that is active as we go into this election and has been active during the time she was asked to step in for Joe Biden. But Saturn has also recently crossed over about the last 12 months, her moon, Kamala, right? We can see that moon in the house of the people and can bring popularity to some degree with the people. Can be now a story in the last 12 months and in the next 9 months ahead of her coming to a sort of a ascendancy and authority in the public eye in matters to do with career and reputation. Now, it's interesting as well to note that the actual solar arc moon moved from 27 degrees to 28 degrees. Now it's no longer in Aries, but in Gemini. It is also in a sextile over the last year or even less. It's in a sextile approximately the last 6 months to its very own self, also giving that natal moon energy strength that it didn't have before. Now she's coming into a time of inner strength and power that's destined for her. And it looks like what the destiny is to run for the election and probably win based on many factors I have said on different videos. But Moon is also here with a North Node, which turns the volume up. So her lunar essence is activated. She's looking like, yeah, I hate it, but everyone calls her Mamala. I don't know who calls her. I think that's her husband, but it kind of became a meme. What way is she the mother of America, or wants to portray herself as a mother of America? That's a good question, isn't it? Her ascendant went into a conjunction with Mars, the fighting spirit in her chart, in the house of debating, communicating, social media, stumping, traveling, rallies. Now that energy of ascendant on Mars, you can note that her ascendant degree in its progression is at 24 degrees and 54 minutes. You can round it up to a 25-degree progressed solar arc ascendant. That is if you take a 21 Mars 4 years ago. 4 years ago, Kamala Harris's ascendant began to become martial. She was actually quite, good at debating, even though she wasn't one of the people who won in the primaries. She did show up as a damn good debater. And also, her qualities of debate can be strong. She was a prosecuting attorney. So I guess I'd say with this, you're going to end up seeing that she's already got the Martian oomph behind her. She's willing to go to bat with fighting for something and going to take aim in a communication, debating, and stumping and traveling and rallies type house. So she's already got that power behind her as of 4 years ago. Well, in this also solar arc chart, her sun has finally been migrating through the sign of Sagittarius from its placement. This is solar arc sun, right? Solar arc sun from its placement in her natal sky where she had a Libra 27-degree sun. Are you noticing a pattern, anybody? Are you noticing that what I'm trying to point you in the direction of is that everything is sextiling itself in the last year for her? She's in a sun sextile sun and solar arc. She's in a moon sextile moon and a Saturn sextile Saturn. It takes approximately 60 years to get to this place in her life. And these are very positive inclinations for success. The sun is crossing the lot of fortune 4 years ago. That's when she became the vice president. Sun is career, lot of fortune is destined fortunes. And South Node makes it very karmic. She is meant to be exactly where she has been as a seemingly backseat, maybe somewhat ineffective vice president, but that's why she's here. The sky brought her here 4 years ago, and now she's in the Saturn sextile Saturn, moon sextile moon, sun sextile sun, height of ease and flow and luck and success. So when we take this chart and we move it over the United States of America and its solar return for this calendar year, what are we seeing? And then we're done with my annotations. And by the way, I am calling Kamala the winner, but not because I prefer her at all. I don't certainly prefer some of the policies of US administration regarding the Middle East, but I would say that Donald Trump may not be in the ballot. So I'm saying she's the winner against Trump. If somebody else stepped in because he's not on the ballot by the time we get to the election, we'll see what I'd say. The election is delayed, or the delays of results, or delay in or inauguration. There's a hot mess around the election, or contesting, and a lot of fighting over who really won. So we shall see what is going to happen. Outside the window, the outside wheel is United States solar return chart. In a chart for a country, the moon represents we the people. Now, we the people in the solar return of the United States chart here, right? And the solar return chart means this is the 8th house of death or commerce or things like that. And this is Kamala's moon in its progression. And this is Kamala's natal ascendant, and her natal Gemini are all perfectly lined up. More so, it's as if the people of America dealing with the 8th house matters, which usually just means death. So there can be something that disrupts or destabilizes the people of America in which they're facing issues of death. With the moon of America's natal solar return chart in the 8th house, but indicating the house of open enemies and adversaries in the Sibley chart, it simply means there may be some kind of ghastly attack towards America that rattles the United States in a 9/11 style way, and everyone rallies around Kamala as the gut person that will be the one to bring them through this time of difficulty and darkness. And the solar return chart of the United States of America, midheaven, right? High noon, and that midheaven high noon placement, right, is in 7, 8, 9, the 10th house in the sign of Leo, which is actually Donald Trump's ascendant. I know it could look good on him, but he's got some difficult other circumstances. Falls in alignment, complete alignment with Kamala Harris's North Node and ascendant on the high noon of power in the solar return of the United States of America's chart for this year. This is a slam dunk in my view. You know, it's interesting to note that her ascendant and her North Node are now traveling right over Donald Trump's Mars, and they're not quite perfectly there, but it means that her identity in her progressed form as a leonine character and as a fierce, leader, lioness, is right in combat with the Mars and the ascendant of Donald Trump. Is the two of them are in like mortal combat together. I could pluck out so many more things in this chart to indicate that Kamala has greater strength than Donald Trump does. But at the end of the day, she does, in my humble opinion, have what it takes to win this election. And so my prediction is, at this juncture, I'm recording October the 7th, that Kamala Harris is the winner of the United States election. And now I'm going to put my esteemed panel on for you guys. Please watch it. It's about an hour and a half long altogether, but especially if you're an astrology learner, you're going to know what these other astrologers and then LeNormand tarot reader Erika has to say. She's dead on. You got to check her channel out on YouTube and her Substack. She's not, I don't think, missed any predictions yet. We both said Walz was going to be the one she picked. We both said Biden would step away before the election. Now, both Steve Judd, was it Steve Judd? No, Rick Levine or Steve Judd. I think it was Rick Levine or Steve Judd, one of the two. me and Erika have both seen that we don't think Trump is going to be on the final ballot. And to some extent, I've always saw two women fighting this year to win the election. So we'll see what happens. And if Trump does not make it to the ballot for some illness reasons, then maybe they'd pop up Nikki Haley or Tulsi Gabbard to take his place. Sorry about the weird light. It's sunny outside. All right, guys, let's go ahead and let's put the rest of the election panel in and let me know what you think in the comments about this kind of stuff. And go ahead, see all the election videos I've already put out. One of them is, will Donald Trump quit? Well, quit. He may not quit. He may be quitted by the sky. All right, let's go ahead and add this place together. Like, subscribe, get my 2025 videos. And oh, by the way, I'll send videos. Everything's in the information box. In the description box are links to all of my presenters' websites. And go check them out. Please give them some love. All right, take care.
Hey, Lori,
Hello, guys. I'm going to stop the recording.
real quick,
Okay.
can I
Yes.
ask a quick question? So I have
And so today we have S.J. Anderson, a fellow Canadian, I think, at least I think he's in Toronto, and a brilliant astrologer. His brand is S.J. Anderson website, and his astrology is on YouTube as well under the same name. And I will be sharing links in the description box for all of you to go find these amazing astrologers. And what I loved about S.J. was this simple, clear way of trying to understand election cycles. So I thought I'd bring him on to our panel today to share what he's discovered and what he thinks might happen in the 2024 US election. Welcome, SJ.
welcome, Lori. Thank you so much for having me. Really, really glad to be here. Let me just get this mic. Sorry, I should have turned this on before. I'm going to do it now. Just to have this also going. Bear with me. I apologize.
Oh, take your time.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll just say I am not from Canada. I'm from Texas, and
Ah,
I'm an old Texan, but I live in a city called Tirana, which is in Albania. So that's the capital city of Albania, is my home city. A lot of times I'll say that on my YouTube channel, and people say, "Oh, Toronto, what park are you in Toronto?" So it's just a pronunciation thing. But I'm really happy to be here. You're from Canada. That's cool. We'll have to connect about that later. I've actually never been up there. Okay, I'm all set to go.
wonderful.
Um,
Albania. How exotic. Wonderful to meet you from Albania, but US, Texan. Okay.
Yes, and it's like Greece, people always wonder about Albania, but we're right north of Greece and east of Italy. So it's just for people out there that might not know what Albania is or how it is. All right, I've got a presentation I've prepared. It'll be short. I just want to let everybody know I like when I do things like this. I just move very fast, and I'm going to be probably talking really fast and just going through a lot of slides, and then I'll stop, and then we can kind of integrate the information as we see fit and questions and everything like that. But if people might say, "Oh, he's going too fast," just know because I like to jam information in. You don't get an opportunity to do this very often, so you try to jam as much in as possible. And that's at least my approach. So I'm going to start going. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing. Can everybody see my screen share here?
Yes.
All right, let's just start this off. U.S. presidential election 2024, always a big deal for astrologers. We always want to dive in and try to predict and try to feel into what the astrology is saying or how the astrology might be informing this moment in time. I'm going to go through 4 sections in this talk. First, summary of previous Saturn and Pisces work that I've done on my YouTube channel and that was alluded to earlier. So that was kind of my big video I released in June 2023 when I saw that cycle. And I was just like, I'm going to release this. I don't want to talk about this anymore, though I've talked about it a few other times in other contexts since then. Second, we're going to look at the Aries ingress analysis, just some quick analysis of that chart, which is a chart astrologers are known for diving into to predict elections. So Aries ingress, Washington, D.C., 2024. Third, I'm going to take a quick look at some root chart analysis, just stuff that's come across my desk that I find interesting related to Donald J. Trump, Kamala Harris, and Sibley chart, which are all 3 root charts. The Sibley chart is the root chart for the United States. And then 4, I want to look at some context, some cycle work for the context after the election, because I think that can inform as much the election result as anything else. So let's just keep moving and keep going. These are the 2 videos I made on my channel back last year. There was Democrats win November 2024, and then an addendum because there was a little bit of a technical kind of snafu. Nothing changed in terms of the result, but the technical, like I said, articulation of the, the case I was making, that changed slightly. So watch them both if you are interested in deeper dives into what I'm about to share. Here's the basic conclusions from that work, and I'm going to read these. So the only 3 elections while Saturn was in Pisces in the Aries Ingress chart for Washington, D.C., the year of the election in the last 150 years saw parties staying in power. So if that party was in power, they stayed in power. And then the last 2 were Democratic Party wins, specifically Roosevelt during the 1930s and Clinton during the 1990s. So again, just what this is, this part of the conclusion, if you go to the moment that the sun ingresses into Aries, the year of the election, if that chart has Saturn in Pisces, then there's continuity by party. And then, so that's part 1. Part 2, if Saturn was in Pisces exclusively during a term, so there is some examples where Saturn was in Pisces not during an election, not during an Aries ingress, but only during the term of a president, that party always wins another term. And so there was 2 cases here, which was 1905, 1908, and then the Clinton presidency, which was an example again. Okay, then the last conclusion, if Saturn was in Pisces during part of an earlier term and part of a potential extended term, the party already in power secures the additional term. And then there's some other results. I know it sounds bland, dry, and kind of technical, but just know the high level summary is Saturn in Pisces is a continuity transit for presidential elections and has shown itself to be such. And so that alone just says, right, who's in power? The Democrats, Joe Biden, of course, still president, but not running. And then Kamala Harris has now, stepped in. And so that would be kind of the short, high level prediction here. Next, I just want to come back into here. And here it is. Here's the ingress chart. Saturn and Pisces, 2024 Aries ingress for Washington, D.C. So everybody can see it here. There it is. And this is the exact moment of the ingress of the sun. It was 2307, 19 March this year. And you can see there was Saturn with Venus in Pisces, Saturn 12 degrees, 13 degree minutes. And so there's the conclusion. Biden and the Democrats win because of those points I just laid out on the previous slide. And I quoted it again here. If Saturn was in Pisces during part of an earlier term and part of the potential extended term, the party already in power secures that additional term. Take note 1964 here, 1968, because that was a year when the president elected before did not run in this extended term potential. And so sadly, John F. Kennedy was assassinated and Lyndon Baines Johnson wins in 1964. That was an example of a year when Saturn in Pisces was part of the earlier term and then extended into the potential new term. So it's similar in this case. The 60s are interesting, not really the topic here, but the Saturn-Jupiter cycle points us to the 1960s. So we're there highly resonant with the 1960s right now. Part of why in those videos, you'll see I was predicting Biden would be replaced as well. And because of this 1960s resonance. Okay, let's keep going. The U.S. Aries ingress for Washington, D.C. rather. I want to just examine this chart and just know this is a core technique. I mean, many people do this every cycle. They look at this chart and then they run an analysis. The foundation of this analysis is that the 10th house is the party in power. And so you examine the nature of the 10th and what's going on in the 10th to understand the Democrats because they're in power. And then the 4th house would be the opposition party, so the Republicans. Now, this analysis might get a little confused because maybe Trump was president before, but I'm going to set all that aside and just assume Democrats 10th, Republicans 4th. And you can see if we just start with the 10th, the moon is in the 10th. The moon in mundane astrology is the people. So right away, you have a delineation, the people with the party in power. And that, you might just shut the book then. The foundation of this ancient technique is the ruling planets of any house tell us the outcome of that house. And you can see here you have the sun in Aries, which is exalted. And in this Aries ingress chart, you have the sun in Aries in the 6th house, which is the health of the leader in play. The sun being a leader, the 10th house being a leader, the 6th house being health. We've already seen that play out. as Joe Biden has stepped down because he's not fit to run again. And so there you go. I want to point out this other layer, and there's no hard and fast rules here. I mean, this is the art of astrology. I'm just interpreting what I see here, and we'll see later why I make my conclusion. But we have other rulership other planets that rule Leo, namely the triplicity lord, Jupiter. So Jupiter is the night triplicity lord of fire signs. And so we might also look to Jupiter in this case to understand what's happening in the 10th house. You can see in this chart, so not only is the sun exalted, the domicile ruler of Leo, but Jupiter, the night triplicity ruler of Leo, is right here in Taurus. It's in its own Egyptian term. So that makes it very strong. It's got great dignity because of that. It's in right near the descendant, within 2 degrees. In the ancient Greek, they called this krematistikos. If the closer you get exactly to an angle, the more power that planet gets. So you have this night triplicity lord of the midheaven, in the angular 7th house, in its Egyptian term, and so-called quickened because of how close it is to an angle. I think that helps the party in power and helps the Democrats. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. You have the opposition party, which is the Republicans. And you see here right away, Mars and Pluto in the 4th whole sign house. That's not good. I mean, just generally in astrology, Mars is a rough energy. Pluto can be kind of a destructive force, now transformative, but destructive as well. But Mars being there is quite concerning, and it's very close to the IC, which is kind of the hidden and the kind of violence is a keyword for Mars. And I'm not saying that, God willing, there is no violence or something like that, but that's destabilizing. The moon is not destabilizing, and so that alone tells us the planets contained in the houses that represent these parties. You've got rougher energy for the Republicans, less rough for the Democrats. Now let's run the analysis related to the domicile lord of the 4th house. So that's Saturn, right in Pisces. This is where it gets a little bit tricky in my view, because even though Saturn has no dignity in Pisces, it's in a very strong house, the 5th house, one of the best houses in astrology, the house of good fortune. It's with its exaltation lord Venus. Maybe the strongest planet in this chart is Venus in Pisces. And so that heats Saturn up and gives it some real power. And so that alone is, to me, it's kind of a nice domicile lord of the 4th. So, it's not like an open and shut case. It really never is. The night triplicity lord of Aquarius, Mercury, in its own Egyptian term. Now, maybe there's a problem because it's near the North Lunar Node that can corrupt it a little bit. So I'm not sure there, but let me just keep going. The final analysis on this, I think it's close, but I'm going with exalted sun, trining the 10th house, okay, receiving the moon, which is the people. That sun is the ruler by domicile, and it makes an aspect, so it's called reception in astrology. I think that beats Mars in the 4th, averse to its ruler, peregrine, meaning no dignity for Saturn in Pisces. And so that's just kind of my read. Now, other astrologers are going to have a different read. Other astrologers will probably, that's just the nature of astrology. That's my kind of read. It's stronger to have that sun trine moon. I want to just say this would fit with the Saturn and Pisces cycle work as well. This read of the Aries ingress, supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, winning. Okay, let me keep going. Not too much longer. I think that it's extremely close. We all know that, and we're all feeling that, and there's no clear-cut favorite right now. The current odds, as I've pulled them up this morning here, we're recording this on 3 October, so just about a month before the election, show that Kamala Harris is very closely, leading in terms of the betting odds. And this website, Election Betting Odds, is a conglomeration of several of the betting markets. So the bettors are saying Kamala is closely ahead. But if you look at the other stats they're pulling, and this is just from one of the betting sites, they show the electoral projection is for Donald J. Trump. And it's because of Pennsylvania. This keeps flipping back and forth. And so it appears that it's all going to come down to Pennsylvania, just so everybody knows. But the point is that it's extremely close. And I think this underscores that Aries ingress chart where you have a Venus exalted with Saturn. How does that compare with Sun trine Moon? And sometimes you just don't have a clear answer. There's some great things about both signifiers in an astrology chart. Okay, let's just keep going. I just have to say this. Is this the highest and best use of astrology's power? And I don't think it is. The powers of astrology are really not best utilized with this kind of left brain hard prediction stuff where it's like, tell me yes or no, and if you get it wrong, you're terrible or something like this. I think we're learning that, but a lot of astrologers, don't worry if you're an astrologer out there and you get it wrong. It's okay. A part of this is my philosophy is that the mind of God is a mystery, and astrology can be very useful. I think that astrology is most powerful as a processing tool. So as reality emerges, we use astrology to process and understand what's emerged. And that's going to become relevant later in these slides when I talk about the context for after the election. The astrology is really going to help us, no matter if DJT or Kamala Harris wins. There's two videos, or one video I suggest. I was happened to be lucky enough to be at this panel. ISAR 2018 is Prediction of Killing Astrology. There's a lot of your favorites, Chris Brennan, Rick Levine, Stephen Forrest. They were all debating that. And I would encourage you to check that out because they break down some for and some against. All right. I want to come here to the chart comparison now with these root charts. So notice this: inner wheel, Donald J. Trump; outer wheel, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has Saturn in Pisces as one of the final dispositors in her chart. Saturn in Aquarius, pardon me, in Saturn in late Aquarius. But look where that is compared to Donald Trump's chart. It is exactly opposite his ascendant and Mars. And everybody's talked about, how Trump is this very martial figure. We know he's fiery, he's aggressive, and he's done well with that. Mars on the ascendant has done well for him. If there was a candidate that can subdue that, I think it could be this very powerful Saturn in Aquarius that Kamala has, and we've seen it already in the debate. I mean, she basically, stomped him down. I'm not even disclosing what I think about issues or anything, but the betting odds surged in her favor after that because of how bad he looked in that debate. But that was her Saturn in Aquarius stopping his self powers. And I wanted to also point out this: she's got Mars in Leo too. She can match Trump. There's no doubt about it. She can match Trump. And the synastry is quite interesting because of that. Another part of the synastry is that the lunar nodal axis is very close in the chart. And this is a Jupiter and Gemini moment for the whole world. Trump gets it on his sun and his north node, but she gets it on her ascendant and north node. So she matches him. And if he benefits, well, she benefits too. But then she's got that Saturn that can really overcome his ascendant. So I think that also leads me to believe that she, is the right candidate to defeat Trump. And so I've said that there. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. Quickly, her midheaven is in his 8th house of endings. So her career is an ending in his chart. And that's where Saturn currently transits, in his 8th. And, you wonder how much that's going to kind of end things, like ending Trumpism, ending this Donald J. Trump era that's been so problematic on a whole number of levels. But her career being the way to express that could be one way to see that. And I just want to give this disclaimer: politician charts, even AA rated charts, can't be trusted. They lie, they produce fake birth certificates. These cannot be trusted. There's already disputes over Donald J. Trump's birth certificate claiming it was a fake. And these are like in biographies. So I say that, and that's why I relied on the Saturn and Pisces cycle in my video, because that is, you don't need a birth chart to make the prediction using that. Okay, now let's move on to Sibley, and then we're almost done. I'm going to keep going here, a few more slides, I think 5 more, but the moon is the people in astrology. This is the US Sibley chart right in the center, and then this is Kamala Harris's chart on the outer wheel. I just want to point out the Sibley, America has an Aquarius moon with the Sibley chart. Very common chart. A lot of us think it works really well. I've seen it work very, very well. The people are forward thinking, implementing innovative structure, etc. We're in an age of Aquarius right now. Pluto was in Aquarius, has been for the last year and a half or so. It'll be in Aquarius for inauguration. In November 2024, the month of the election, Pluto enters Aquarius for good. Saturn and Jupiter conjoin in Aquarius in December 2020. So that's an important cycle. We're in very much an age of Aquarius. And I think her Saturn being right on the Sibley moon tells us that she just may be the leader. Saturn can be the leaders. It's great ranks, according to Vedius Valens, the ancient astrologer. So her kind of power rising up to kind of embody this Aquarius moon. It would fit with things like the first that she would embody. First woman president, and the moon is the mother, right? So she would be this Aquarius moon, first, the mother of the nation. It's just quite perfect. Okay. So, okay. It's the Aquarian nature. She fits that more than J. Trump. J. Trump seems like the old guard, and this is dying, and now we're making way for the new. And I just want to point out, Aquarius is not all rainbows, all right? It's not just some fantasy world. It's a Saturn ruled sign. And I want to show this is what another reason why I think it supports her is that we're in a state of wartime and turmoil right now globally. And America is going to get drawn into this. We'll see it later with these transits of Neptune and Aries and Uranus and Gemini next year. We've talked about this at length, a lot of us. But in the Tarot, the Queen of Swords is the Aquarius associated card for a lot of correspondence systems. Look at this. It's not known to be very, it's a Saturn card. Like it's the Saturn Queen that's out here to enforce the rules, right? And I think this could be, what if this is the end of Trump, right? This is Kamala. But the thing is, remember, Kamala was a cop. And there is this whole side of her that is this enforcer. And I think that that would be part of this age of Aquarius, where you have Kamala Harris being this kind of enforcing Aquarius cop energy for the new system, which of course will be quite digital. We know facial recognition technologies transforming travel. And I haven't seen these yet, but I've seen a lot of people talking about this stuff. I guess it's in airports, but basically we're entering into kind of a digital control structure in a time of war and crisis. That's probably going to become even more important. Free speech during wartime, go back to Eugene Debs and the World War I, put in jail for just saying I'm against the war, a socialist icon. So I just think we're entering the crisis. Let me just say this differently. The crisis period we're entering into is going to trigger Aquarian structures. It has to, because that's how you get through a crisis. And so I think that that her background and what she might represent in terms of what's happening in the world is kind of a perfect fit for this. Okay, let me just come in now to the post-election context. Now, I've just alluded to it, but Saturn and Neptune, or Neptune and Aries, last time during U.S. Civil War, 2025, will be there from 2025 to 2039. That's Neptune and Aries. Uranus and Gemini, 2025 to 2033, last time during World War II, and the previous time during the U.S. Civil War. I work with Dan Waits on his World Astrology Report. We break all this down at length, and it's a video series called the Astrology to 2020. So go watch those if you want to learn more about that. The point is, it's a time of crisis. These are the transits that indicate the time of crisis that I was just alluding to. Kicks off next year. And I want to just say this post-election context, which scenario is more likely to bring a U.S. Civil War resonance? And I don't want a full-on Civil War. That's why I use the term resonance specifically. There'll just be rhymes, right? Hopefully, pray for peace, no war, let's make peace, okay? But is it a DJT loss and then another Stop the Steal and J6 style news headlines? That to me seems like the most likely cycle currently to fit that symbolism. And you already see it in the news. Like this was just from a few days ago, J.D. Vance campaign stop. He had this Stop the Steal planning. Like they're already setting up the logic of that. It was in Pittsburgh. You had here the other scenarios. Of course, we saw that the Floyd protests in summer 2020, violence in DC. So that it could fit this kind of breakup or civil war scenario if Trump wins. But I just think it's more likely because it's already being set up with these guys. All right. And here's a couple more stories almost through, but J.D. Vance in the debate he just had wouldn't answer if the election was stolen. So they're already kind of going there. And then this was this summer, he had a stop in Ohio where they said it's going to take a civil war. This was a GOP state senator at this rally. So this discourse is more commonly found with the Republicans. And if they lose, I think it's more likely to get there. All right. Let me see here. Only, I think, three more. There's other. So I just have this slide to say, and I won't go through it because I know we're kind of running short on time. But I think if the Republicans end up winning, it's kind of scary for me. And this isn't my astrological analysis, but you have to consider the other scenario. And we know that in a time of war where you'd have this kind of patriotic right, similar to the Bush era, I lived through that. And the right wing becomes the kind of rah-rah with patriotism and the flag. They're cloaked in the flag and kind of pushing war heavily. Trump is going to be the guy for that, right? He would be the president during this kind of I'm going to say World War III. I know I have it written here, but just whatever this crisis is going to be, I think we can get out of it. I'm optimistic. You can go to my channel, go to what I'm talking about with Dan. Actually, Dan and I will release a video this weekend about war next year. And we have an optimistic tone. We're trying to keep it optimistic. But just know, if they win, it can match this wartime, because this is kind of the American, war. And it might be the perfect way to get the good old boys that are skeptical of the system to come back in and support war, right? So, okay, let me, and so Trump as the anti-war president was always a myth. That's important to understand. And that article lays it out. But okay, let me just say this. I'm reaching the conclusion. There's wild cards in 2024. This is why it's hard to make predictions. We've just had 2 visible eclipses in late 2023 and first part of 2024. That can alter and make it hard to kind of grapple with these emergences. The Pluto returns just now finishing this month, the final station. That can be destructive. There's 68 resonances. That was a crazy year. The banking crisis and the war in Europe, the Uranus and Gemini. This could all destabilize. We might be in a uniquely kind of crisis-oriented astrological and on-the-ground time where it's these past continuity of power transits and the thesis there. It just is going to be disrupted because it's too crazy and too unpredictable. So that would be how this prediction might fail. You can watch this video on my channel, The Rebirth of America. I break this down an hour and 20 minutes, all of this stuff. But one of my final conclusions is retaining and maintaining a spiritual center amidst this insanity, loving kindness for all beings. And I go into some of my spiritual philosophies there to ground during this crazy time. And I'm going to close there. You can go to my website, sjanderson144.com, my Patreon, sjanderson144. I do live streams and teaching there, have a newsletter. YouTube, sjanderson144, and then my Instagram, sjanderson233. So that's it. Compressed, short, but hopefully a lot there for you all. And that's what I'm looking at here. So Kamala, Democrats win is my short summary.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. Thank you. That was amazing. A lot of great information you provided. I have a couple thoughts and I'll share those. And we had one question. I just love how literal astrology can be sometimes. And when you just kind of look at that Jupiter with Uranus in the ingress chart, and you go surprise, and there was a surprise. It was a surprising Joe Biden stepping down. And then you looked at the Pluto Mars and you think Trump assassination, right, in the house of the opposing party, the 4th house. And so I also love the sort of simplicity sometimes of a sky. I remember seeing the ingress chart and went moon in the 10th, woman in power. So it can also be female. And lastly, I love your comment about her Saturn on the USA moon, because people jokingly call her Mamala.
Oh, I've
Yes,
heard that.
it's a kind of Mamala nickname that she has going in the sort of, I don't know if it's meant to be facetious or not. So those were amazing examples, and I was really enchanted by the presentation. Thank you. I'm going to say one question from the listeners, and someone asked, is the date of the event chart significant? And I asked them which chart they were referring to, and I haven't heard back from Julie. Julie, do you want to add more? But if she was talking about the ingress chart, that was the exact moment that the sun entered 00 degrees of Aries back on March 19th, Julie. And it's a timestamp, like an
I,
ink blot test.
I wonder if she's talking about the election day chart, because that would be the event, would be the election.
That's what she's looking at. Yes, yes. So on that chart for the election day, what would you say about that, SJ?
I would say yes, but it's hard to get a time. I know a friend of mine uses the Dixville Notch. Is that the first voting that opens like the night before in New Hampshire or something like that? I just don't, you can't get a time. There's voting all over the world. There's many route charts for voting in many locations, and it becomes unwieldy. That's why we like ingress charts. There's no doubt. You have the chart. It's undeniable. You could use, I guess if I had to be only reliant on that, you might want to look at Sibley and just look at transits through the day. And I haven't done this work, like see where the moon is in the Sibley chart, see where things are hitting in the Sibley chart. Actually, we do know, let me go back to the Sibley, and I can tell you right now, Mars is at the end. Well, and this is not what we're looking at, but just the Sibley chart that's Donald J. Trump's chart. Let me come to Sibley. Actually it's higher in this presentation. Here's Sibley. No, that's pardon me, everybody. I'm sorry. I know it's in here, and I think it's good to do this here because
Mm-hmm.
here it is. Here it is. So inner wheel is the Sibley chart. We know the big transit that week. It's Mars opposite Pluto, Mars in Cancer opposite Pluto in Capricorn in the anaretic degree. So that would be, let's ground into Sibley. That's going to be right here, the 8th house, where America has some a stellium in Cancer. So you'll have Mars here, and then you'll have Pluto here in the second house. Now these are houses of, so anyhow, so my answer to you is yes, we can do some work. Let me just do a little bit of it here. The one transit I know would be the most important that I would want to begin my analysis on. And that is just what is Mars doing in this anaretic degree of cardinal and into the first degree of fixed. And actually, I'm glad she asked that because, and I would have put it here if I had more time, but it's coming out here now. Where was Mars during the J6 event? Late Aries, first degree of Taurus. And that's, remember we hit that guy with the horns, the pictures of that guy with the horns. I think his name was QAnon Shaman, the
Mm-hmm.
famous, that was the anaretic Mars from Aries cardinal into fixed Taurus that day of that event. And so you get a resonance of that right during that week of the election. And so it makes me opposite Pluto. And it just makes me wonder how much is going to be. I think it would support the scenario where Trump is going to lose, or they're going to delay the ballot counting because they have these this part of the system now. I mean, they'll tell you. I've seen the U.S. mail's PDF. They're like, look, we have to get the mail and count the votes, and it's going to take some time. But it's kind of writing itself, right? If the results aren't announced right away, or it's the next day in Pennsylvania, and they're counting ballot, and then these stop the steal people are going to go crazy on that now. And if Kamala ends up getting the Pennsylvania and therefore the presidency, you can see how now we're in a major resonance with Mars and fixed, and then Mars will station retrograde on December 5th and go backwards. So that kind of, and then we'll have to relook and re-examine and redo it all. So it's more that analysis that I would be interested in rather than finding one chart from that day to try to read on its own sake. It's more like these transits that moment in time are part of, and how might that be playing a role.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't look good, does it? Eighth house is the house of the shared containers of materiality, aka votes, right? That's
Yeah.
the collective asset of those literal objects. And I think there could be, I was alive, I think everybody here maybe can remember the 2000 election. Wasn't that wild? I mean, it took so long, and the courts and the hanging chads, and
Yeah.
it feels to me like something could be
Yeah.
similar to
Yeah.
that, especially with Mars on Mercury, right? The planet of counting.
So I would
So
agree with you on that too. And one of the things that I've noticed, I mean, Donald Trump's sun is in Cancer on the dog star in his solar return. And every time when he lost the election, his sun was also in Cancer, but also in his solar return. But also the idea that I've been talking about this, and then we're going to move on to other presenters. I mean, I just kind of think that Jupiter refrainment, it's almost like a refrainment. Jupiter comes up and sniffs Trump's sun and North Node and Kamala's ascendant, and then backs off. And he comes close and he retrogrades on October the 9th. And that made me think delay in coronation. There will not be an immediate answer to who won this election. And I also kept saying, it feels hanging Chad there's going to be a dispute about something. So it just feels like we won't get the right answer right away because Mars is retrograding too, but we're still trying to plow through, right? SJ, what is the final determination, even amongst the wild cards? And so you're going with it, the Democrats win, and Kamala is our next president. Your
I
next
am.
president. Okay,
That
gotcha.
way, if you put me against the wall and said you have to pick, yes, I'm going to go with Kamala. And I would just think about it this way. We try to do our best. We're feeling into cycles. I think what's most important is showing our work. And then now we can, as astrologers, learn if the result is the opposite, we can learn from it. We can say, well, these cycles didn't hold, and cycles fail. I mean, cycles, you'll get 4 out of 5, and that's
Yeah.
okay. In
Yeah.
fact, that failed. Saturn and Pisces in the middle of the 19th century, I think it was Polk stepped down. He said, I'm only going to have one term. And he announced it before the term. And then he stepped down. And then the Whig Party came into power. So it's, I just encourage people to, especially in our community, I think this is why people sometimes have hesitance, is that there can be a sense of a lot is on the line professionally. And I would rather us say, let's just show our work and have a conversation and learn from each other and learn from our technique and just see how this works. But yes, if you put me up against the wall, I will say Kamala is going to be the next
All
president.
right. Thank you so much for that great presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was amazing. And so if you need to go off and do other things, well, we're going to bid you farewell, and we'll continue on with our presenters in order of we'll move to Erika, and then hopefully everyone has time to stay, and we'll move on. Thank you so much, SJ.
Thank you for having me. Very kind of you to invite me. And good to see everybody else, and I look forward to checking in with your work here when this comes out. So I bid you adieu, and thank you again.
No problem. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wonderful. So Erika Robinson is a LeNormand tarot card reader, author of a book and more. She has a channel that's starting to take off on YouTube in the company of the cards. And welcome. We'll put all your links in the description box. Welcome, Erika. Would you be daringly willing to share what you've come up with using your oracle tools?
So, a couple of things. One of the things that I'm not an astrologer by any means, love you all, but I'm not one. But one of the things that I always think about is that astrology seems to be very grounded, even though we're talking about planets and the sky and all of that, seems very grounded in what the Greeks would call chronos, which is time on the clock, time on the watch, time on the calendar. The Greeks have another word for time, which is kairos. And kairos means the fullness of time. It includes chronos, but it's more than that. It's the past, the present, the future. Physics tells us that the past, the present, and the future all happen at once. So what I do is I work with cards. I can be French about it, LeNormand. That's fine. However you say it, it's fine. It's a woman's name. The system was named for Madame de LeNormand. She never used this system ever, but it was a marketing device because she was a famous medium. So the people, whoever they are, who came up with this system, it originally was a game, said, you know what, let's slap her name on it and, we'll sell a lot of cards. So, what I want to say about what I do is that I feel as though my work acts as a bridge between Chronos and Kairos, right? So that's to say that I am very aware always of the mutability of energy, or what SJ would call the mind of God. And this means that I can read on a certain issue, and this is what it looks like in the moment. But time is mutable, and people have free will. And so things can shift and change. Okay, all of that to say that I have laid out a spread. I mean, it's just so you can see, there's all the cards, but I'm going to hold them up. And LeNormand, I'm starting with the traditional 5-card spread. I asked the question, so what's going to happen with the election? And I'm called the queen of significators, which means that I'm very good at saying, there was an old American Express commercial that said, there's a card for that. Whatever you need, there's a card for that. Well, in Lenormand as well, there's a card for that. So when I think about, well, what significator, what card do I want to focus on for the election, the votes, right? I chose the letter. This is my deck, by the way. The letter, because the letter is ballots, right? Votes. So what I did was I put that in the center, and then I pulled 2 cards before it, 2 cards after it, gave me five cards. So what I'm going to do is just go through those first. And then, of course, I pulled clarifiers to flesh out the story. So the cards that I pulled in the original line of 5 I think it was, the house, the child. We have our letter in the middle. We have the sun. And we have the coffin. So these 5 cards will give me kind of like a 2-sentence précis that will get us going in this reading. The house. This is the body politic. It is our understanding as Americans of who we are. It is our understanding of who we want to be and who we have been, because none of that is the same thing, let me just say. Now, the next card is the child, and I love that because the child is about something new. We are in a process of reinvention as a country. There's no 2 ways about that. Again, what that will look like in the end, we'll look at in the rest of the reading. But we're definitely in the process of reinvention, of doing something new, something maybe that's never been done before, which makes sense because that's how we started as a country, right? In the middle, remember, we have the ballots. And then we have the sun and the coffin. Now, the sun, everybody says, as they say in tarot, oh, it's the best card in the deck. Well, okay, sometimes, but sometimes not. I mean, have you ever had a sunburn? Did you ever go outside in the, I live in Southern California, the Southern California sunshine with no sunglasses? Woo! The sun can be painful. The sun can act as a searchlight. There is no hiding from the sun. And what is being highlighted, pardon the pun, the fact that we are in the process of transformation. This is a coffin. Nobody likes a coffin, I'm just saying. However, what is the coffin all about? Some people in LeNormand, we have a card that didn't show up in the reading, but it's the snake. And people want to call that the card of Kundalini transformation. Yeah, okay, but not in LeNormand. LeNormand is a very European oracle. Kundalini has nothing to do with anything in terms of LeNormand. This is the card for transformation, the coffin. Now, why would that be? Well, in order to become something new, something has to cease being the thing that it was, right? So, for example, if we have snow, in order for snow to morph into something else, it has to cease being snow, which means if it's heated or it's vaporized or whatever it is, to turn it to water or to turn it to steam, right? It had to cease being snow. Now, is it in the end, is it still its own essence, which is water? Yes. But this is the card of transformation. I don't want us to lose sight, though, of the fact that it is also the card for death. And I think one of the things that the body politic is trying to figure out is, do we want to kill altogether the great experiment? Or do we want to, as I keep saying in my videos, become a more perfect union, which requires real transformation? So that's the short story. So then what I do is I pull clarifying cards on each of those original 5 cards. So here we have the house, the body politic, our American understanding of who we are and who we've been. And this is a past line. So it's a farthest line to the left, but it's the past. And we have lily, fish, and key. So I'm going to say that one of the things that has kept things as they are to date in the body politic and in the country at large is the fact that we have sort of crafted this image of ourselves as quite the kumbaya country, but we're not. You know, um, you know, I mean, we do things like pledge allegiance to the flag, which I know a lot of countries feel is really weird. We sing patriotic songs during ball games. We are all about cultivating this image of peace and kumbaya. It's an emotional vibe that we all buy. By the way, all of us buy. I'm a Black American. I don't necessarily always feel patriotic, but I mean, I'll sing the songs. I'll put my whatever we do as Americans. This is all emotion based. And it has been the key towards keeping people watching the watch. America, 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 without self-examination as to who we are. Okay. Then I pulled cards on the child because I'm saying, oh my God, what new thing is coming in? What's that about? Well, the cards are the bouquet, young women, and the star. This is a beautiful, beautiful line. Okay. This is what's coming in that's new. We have the opportunity to give ourselves a gift. It will come courtesy of women. And I have 2 women cards in my deck. Most modern LeNormand decks do now have 2 cards. And so when I created this deck, I made sure that one woman was younger, one woman was older, because there are different energies, right, with youth and with age. And this one is about women who are of childbearing age, with all that that means in this day and age, and people who care about them will be pivotal in this gift that we give ourselves, this new gift, moving forward into the future. So far it looks optimistic for change in a transformative way, as opposed to, dun, 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 coffin meaning death. Now, in the middle of the line is votes. So now we're getting down to it. What are the significant, what are the clarifiers? The young man in my deck, the extra card that I added into the system, it didn't have this before, but I'll talk about it in a minute, scales, and then mice. Okay. So this is kind of where we are in this moment. Okay, so we have the votes and we have this young man card. Love this. Now, this young man is yang energy, if you will. Optimistic, assertive, confident. What I love most about this card is the vulnerability of his neck. He's willing to stick his neck out because it actually doesn't really occur to him that that's a dangerous thing to do. So this is this new experiment that we're on the verge of embarking on, perhaps. And I have this card here. Now, what I did when I created this card is I wanted a scale and I wanted it evenly weighted. But I wanted heavy coins on one side and I wanted daisies on the other. And why would that be? Well, according to the laws of physics, this scale being evenly weighted with these objects on it is an impossibility. But guess what? Not according to the laws of metaphysics. And in every moment, we get to decide what is our driver? What do we care more about? Now, by the way, no judgment, because there are times, for example, when we have to choose the practicalities that coins are about. Think of pentacles, right? If you're a tarotist, we need a roof over our head, food to eat, clothes on our bodies, right? But there are other times when we can have loftier, higher motivations. And I think that we are in the process of figuring that out. Even though this scale is static, scales really actually are kind of never static. They're always going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And this is creating for the body politic dis-ease. And I don't mean disease, I mean dis-ease, discomfort, worry, anxiety, stress. But let me say too that one of the meanings that I've discovered for this card over the many years that I've been doing LeNormand is, if you are familiar, not to sound all American, but I know I'm about to, with Disney's Cinderella, in that animated version, there were mice. And they were in the castle with Cinderella and her mean stepmother and ugly stepsisters, and they were her only friends. Now, in the beginning of the movie, they were very bad-tempered, like mice, like all over the place, bumping into each other, arguing, just really very typical of the mice card. However, then they were given a mission, and the mission was to create a beautiful ball experience for Cinderella. At which point, all of their anxiety and worry and freneticism morphed, and it became excitement. And it was excitement in pursuit of a cause. So again, just like energy is mutable, cards can morph. And I think that we have the potential to shift this card from anxiety, worry, and stress, right, to the excitement and optimism that sometimes this card can show. All right, so now what's coming in? Well, now we're moving into the future. We have the heart, we have the sun, and the clarifiers are the dog, the cross, and the whip. OMG. Okay, what's that about? The sun. The sun is, again, I'm not gonna interpret this as yippee, woo, best card in the deck. No. Searchlight. We will be looking at ourselves as we observe what goes on. The dog is the card for attorneys, as if we haven't seen enough attorneys in this whole tortured mess, there will be more. And it will be painful, contentious, argumentative, and ugly. Because I do agree that the election will be contested. Okay. So now we come to this coffin. And we have the clarifiers, the book, the ring, the clouds, and then I drew a fourth clarifier. So what's that about? Well, again, this is, who knows, right? Is this the end or is this a new beginning? Okay. We have the book. This will frustrate you because the book, even though you and I know books hold information, in LeNormand, not so much. The book is about things we don't know, stuff that's unknowable. So what this coffin represents, for good or for ill, is at present, right, in this moment, a month prior to the election, unknown. And we will be in this unknowing energy it's like a circle. It's like we wake up, it's Groundhog Day. It feels very much like that. And this, again, creates doubts, worry. There will be doubts about the election because why? Because it will be close. It will be close. Now, I mirror this last card, and then I have 3 more cards over here I'll talk about in a second. This last card that I pulled, this is the garden, and it's a community garden, and it stands for like everything that it's actually the opposite of the card I'm going to mirror it with. I can mirror it with the house. If the house is the body politic, ourselves, our bodies, our understanding of ourselves as Americans, if you want to think of that as the White House, well, this is the people. So the people will be deciding who it is that we want to be. Now, am I going to come down on a side? Of course I am. Because the last part of my spread is 3 cards, and then I'm done. And I call these 3 cards the postscript. Again, I am looking at how to translate information I get from Kairos into the language of Chronos. So I got the heart, the scythe, and the anchor. And I want to, I guess I'm concurring with SJ about this. The heart is, we'll call it, because I'm American, patriotism, love of the country, etc. But there will be, well, I mean, a knife to the heart is not good. I think that there will be, I think Harris will win. Kamala, by the way, Mamala is what her stepchildren call her. And this is what people have picked up and called her. I do not call her as a rule by her first name, nor would I call her Mamala, because part of the American fiction, this American sort of narcoleptic desire for kumbaya, is this tendency to cast Black women in the role of mommy, which is why everybody wanted to put what's her name, Obama on the ballot. She's not thinking about politics. So I'm not doing that, and I try to respect her. If we're going to say Trump, then I think we should say Harris. But I love that the anchor is the last card because an anchor is an oxymoronic instrument. On the one hand, if we're a ship and we want, there's a storm, we want to be at berth and at anchor because it keeps us safe. On the other hand, in the 70s, in New York, I lived in the 70s in New York in the 70s, and the mafia was big. And if they ran out of cement overshoes, they would wrap an anchor around your ankles and you'd be sleeping with the fishes, which is to say an anchor can also keep you stuck. Sometimes we confuse safety with stuckness. But because we have this heart here, I agree with SJ that for the times such as they will become, and I do think some version of civil war will ensue because those people will not go away quietly. She is the perfect woman to keep us on a safe course, to keep us safe, to keep us from sinking but to keep us safe, far better than the other one, we'll just say. So I too predict a Harris win, and I also predict a very bumpy ride. I will, of course, be looking at this again because energy is mutable, but I have consistently seen through all the times that I've looked at this, a Harris win.
Hey, sorry, I was muting myself.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing the way you see the world through the lens of the LeNormand deck. And I would also want to ask a couple of questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
So when you're doing this, I mean, because I believe everything is about everything is about everything. So a symbol can be metaphoric, literal. It also can
Right.
have multiple meanings. Because in the astrology, for instance, of Donald Trump right now, he looks like he could have a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then when you say scythe and heart, and you go, knife to the heart or something, I'm like, okay, how much of this can also have multiple layers? Like maybe
No,
Donald doesn't
no,
make it to the election. No.
no. You know why? Because I didn't ask that question.
Okay.
Letterman is a funny oracle. It's very question specific.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, what I could do is, shuffle my cards and look at his health and see whether these two cards come up. But I will just say, short version, I have done that. I have looked at his health. A couple of videos ago, I looked at this and I said that. And again, energy is mutable. I could be wrong, you never know. But I think in the third week of October, there will be a cardiac event of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm feeling similar things. And also, when you said heart, scythe, and anchor, stability, but if it was Kamala, we could take the heart, Harris. If it was Harris, we could take the heart and the scythe and go tough love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, she was a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the tough love is called for. Yeah.
Yeah, there. That was brilliant. Thank you so very
Thank
much.
you.
You're welcome to sit in for the next part. Reena's going to talk about it from her angle on astrology and hang out with us.
I'd
If
love
anybody has any questions, I don't see any new questions coming through. Nope. So if you had a question for Erika in the chat, there's a few people watching. Go ahead and put it in there. Otherwise, we'll get moving on. I think we lost Christina. I've texted her and messaged her, and she hasn't gotten back. I'm not sure she's in any area where the whole power outage thing happened or hurricane just problem. So if she doesn't make it back in the room, I'll just add her as a separate video edit attached. So we just lost her signal, I think. She normally comes in with a full video, so I think she might have had some issues. She might have been on her phone. Okay, so thank you so much, Erika. It was, oh wait, now Patricia has a question. What is the deck you are using?
The deck I'm using is called Erika's LeNormand of Hope. So it's my deck, and there will be a link to how you can get it if you'd like it. But there are beautiful Lenormand decks out there. So, just do your due diligence and pick what's resonant for you.
Yeah, and she teaches people how to read the cards as well, this kind of style of reading. So if you're ever wanting to learn it, she's your go-to teacher as well as she is the creator of this kind of content. They're for sale, Deborah. Absolutely. We'll have all the links here, but if you just Google, what's the best way, your website?
If she goes to La Panthère Studio, that's where they're sold.
Like the Panther, La Panthère Studio.
So
Okay.
French, yes.
Brilliant.
Right?
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Yeah, they are really pretty. I liked how they turned out. Okay, it was a big Kickstarter a year ago.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. And we're going to unmute you. You can mute yourself now, just in case. And we're going to move on to Reena from astrocuties.com, who has an amazing analysis and took a huge amount of time to do research on the nodal influence. Welcome, Reena.
Hi, thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting this. Erika, I just want to say I also read tarot, and I have been too anxious to pull any cards on the election. However, the astrological analysis of many different people have kind of, and my own analysis has kind of like set my nerves at ease a bit. But yeah, reading tarot for the election, even before I did any analysis, I was like, I can't pull a card.
I kind of hear you on that, It's nerve-wracking. Well, do you want to be able to share a screen or just talk about what you've discovered? What was your preference?
Yeah, I'm gonna share some slides in a moment, but just to kind of go through my process in this, I was tracking the Saros cycle, which is the cycle of the nodes. around the zodiac in a synastry with each candidate's chart. And how this started was I was thinking, okay, there's been lots of analysis of who is going to win, and I want to look at this at the most pragmatic point of view, and I want to just look at the charts. And what we do have is we have charts from when Donald J. Trump won, and we have a chart from when he lost. So we already have data on that. So I said, okay, let me look at these charts, and I noticed something kind of funny going on with the nodes. And I said, huh, okay. So I went back and I said, let me see if this was present in the prior election cycle. And it was there. And I said, okay, well, let me look at the one before this. And until like 3 a.m, I was looking at these charts and like doing quick rectifications of the birth times of, all the way back to George Washington. And I was like, wow, this has, I mean, we don't know how accurate some of the birth time data is. But like I said, I did like quick rectifications. I was like, okay, this seems correct, at least, by the houses. And this Saros cycle not only pointed out who the probable winner of the election would be, however, it also pointed out things like Biden stepping down and those sorts of events happening across history for all US presidents. So I was like in shock when I discovered this. I was like, I don't know if I'm the first person to discover this or, if this is kind of like a new predictive algorithm that we can use. So I'm just going to share.
Oh, yes. Let me give you, do I have to give you permission or not? Or are you able to?
Let's see.
If you hit the share button, and it'll give me a pop-up saying you're asking to share if you can't share already. And yeah, her content is, I think it might be original. I hadn't heard someone do it that way before, and I caught your channel for some reason. Thank you, universe. So, oh, you got it. Wonderful.
All right, can you see the full?
Nope, there we are. We're in large format, and I'll mute myself once you get started, just in case I have background noise here.
Yeah. So, this is the pattern that I noticed emerge. And you can see this is George Bush's chart on November 5th, 2004. And you can see the North Node is in his 10th house. And this was during the time of the election. It was very close to his midheaven. It was about to transit over his midheaven. So this is one of the patterns that I noticed is that the candidate with the stronger relationship to the nodal axis during the time of the election, sometimes during the inauguration, which is only, a few months afterwards, was most likely the one to win when the candidate who had the less favorable astrology in terms of the node would win. They would either have to step down, they died in office, or they were assassinated. Almost every single time. There was only one case, I think it was George H.W. Bush, and he only served 1 term. And there were lots of things going on with his presidency that kind of, just a lot of controversy. But I'm not going to get into the whole nodal analysis. I go into that more in depth in my video of how the nodes affect a president's legacy. So this was, 2004. We can see that right here with the node just transiting over his midheaven. So then we look at Barack Obama, who has the node right here. It looks further than it is just because the moon and Chiron and Neptune are right there as well. But the node is at 13 degrees and his ascendant is at 18 degrees. And this was in 2008 when he won. I don't go into the opposing candidates charts in this analysis. I do that in my other video. But what I found was that, again, there was a correlation here between the ascendant and the transiting north node. And of course, Barack Obama won. 2012, we can see the north node is transiting over just 2 degrees from Barack Obama's midheaven right here on November 5th, 2012. And of course, he won. He became president. So the next chart, Donald Trump, 2016. Here's the node. It is separating from, or it is applying, sorry, from to his ascendant, but it is quite close. And then during the inauguration, it would have been much closer to his ascendant. And just to clarify, when I looked at the opposing candidates' charts at this time, there was no correlation with the node. A lot of the times the node was transiting well through their 12th house. Oftentimes it was also either in their 8th house. And there was no correlation to these, what I call outward facing placements, being the ascendant, the midheaven, or the sun. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So 2016, Donald Trump won the presidency. He had the North Node applying to his ascendant. In 2020, you can see he was going through his nodal return. Now, what I found for presidents who had their nodal return happen during their presidency, oftentimes they did win the election. However, there was a lot of controversy surrounding their legacy. And I think it's safe to say there was a lot of controversy surrounding Donald Trump's legacy, especially after this election. It was just like Pandora's box just opened, all of these lawsuits. I mean, they were going on prior to this. However, you know, everything that has happened to Donald Trump since this election, it's just one thing after another after another. So he lost the election. Joe Biden's chart actually in 2020, it did not have the stronger correlation to the node. However, like I said, this algorithm also has been fairly accurate and very accurate in predicting presidents either stepping down or dying in office, being assassinated, those sorts of things. And as we know, Joe Biden stepped down, decided to not run. So I mean, there are some astrologers out there who think that something is going to happen to Joe Biden. I actually had a little bit of an inkling this eclipse season, because as we know, the nodes are indicative of, you know, where the eclipses are happening and how they're going to affect, especially people in leadership. So I was concerned. However, you know, it's the day after the eclipse. We'll see how the rest of the energy goes. But I think that, you know, him stepping down was indicative of that astrology playing out. So, and I have Joe Biden's chart here. There is very weak correlation here with the South Node being close to his ascendant. So, I mean, we could say there's correlation, but according to this algorithm, it is very weak. So, when we look at Donald Trump's chart for 2024, we can see the node is, the transiting North Node is in his 9th house. It's about to transit into his 8th house. This has a lot of implications for him in terms of just, you know, the eclipse cycles and where all of this is happening. A lot of stuff has been happening in his 8th house since, or 8th house related since Saturn ingressed into his 8th house. I think the day that Saturn entered into Pisces was the day that he was indicted, I believe. I go into that a bit more in my other video. But anyway, having the node, especially in 2025 in the 8th house, one, it has no correlation with this algorithm. And two, we all know the 8th house is the house of death, the house of sex, the house of taxes. I don't know if I mentioned the house of debt. And I think all of that is very significant for him right now, especially with all of these trials going on, everything that's happening. So as we can see, there's no correlation with his algorithm in Donald Trump's chart for 2024. It is not, the node is not transiting over his midheaven, his ascendant, or his sun. So this is Kamala Harris's chart. And we can see now the North Node is in her 11th house. However, I had predicted in one of my videos that around September 17th, there was an eclipse in Pisces in her 10th house. It would have happened around here somewhere. It was close to Saturn, I believe. And this is in her 10th house of career. Shortly after the election, the node is going to be in her 10th house of career during the inauguration. So here there is correlation to this algorithm. It's not the strongest that I've seen. However, the correlation in her chart is much stronger than Donald Trump's. So that was kind of what I based my initial analysis of who would win on. And as we saw on September 17th, it was like around that time that she started leading in the polls. So we'll see what happens. I have my opinions, but I try not to, when making predictions, take sides. And there was another, after I did this nodal analysis, I followed up on my channel with another analysis with a technique that is still kind of being explored by astrologers, zodiacal releasing. We know it's an ancient technique, but it's only recently rediscovered. So we're still learning a lot about that. But I thought, okay, let me do an analysis based on a technique that's been around for thousands of years, as opposed to my, technique that has been around for about a month. And I looked at the zodiacal releasing for both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So what I found interesting about this is I highlighted right here. You can see that the period that Donald Trump is in right now started in the year 2000. And I think a lot of people forget that that was actually the first year that he ran for president. He ended up dropping out of the race. He ran in which party did he run in? It's skipping my mind right now, but he ran not for the Republican Party. But that was the first year that he really became involved in politics. And you can see that that cycle is coming to an end on April 20th, 2025. But the last period in this cycle starts on November 21st, 2024, which is right around the election. I do agree with pretty much every astrologer, every person, every political analyst that this, this election season is not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. And I think this peak period for him is he's going to go out of this election cycle with a bang. I don't know how. I don't know what's going to happen. I think he probably will contest the results of the election. But I thought it was interesting that he's going through a peak period around that time of the election. And if you look at the chart here for that date in synastry with the transiting events, you can see that Uranus is 1 degree separating from his midheaven, which, a lot of astrologers know the day that Mars conjunct Uranus, it was directly on his midheaven. That was the day of the first assassination attempt. And Uranus is just it's hanging out there. It's retrograde right now. It's going to be passing over his midheaven. So this is a tumultuous time for him, especially for everyone. And you can see, the node is going to be in his 8th house. All of this 8th house synastry that I was talking about earlier is happening. And it's also conjunct Saturn, and Venus is right there. So this is going to be an interesting day for Donald Trump once he enters into this new, it's actually a peak period for him. Like I said, back here, you can see there's a plus sign that denotes a peak period in zodiacal releasing. And this is, I think it's safe to say it's going to be at least one of the last chapters of his life. It lasts up until he's 97 years old. So we will see how that begins to play out on April 20th, 2025. So the last thing that I want to present is Kamala Harris's zodiacal releasing, which, this to me, if anything, shows a very clear picture of her career. For both of these candidates, I'm releasing from the lot of Spirit, which shows their career trajectory. So you can see that on December 25th, 2020, she entered into a peak period in Pisces. And this was right before she became vice president of the United States. So she's staying in this peak period, this level 1 peak period, until she is 68 years old. So you can see here that, she's in a level 2 peak period that she entered into November 10th, 2023, which, that's significant. We didn't know that she was running for president up until just a few months ago. But, perhaps behind the scenes, she was preparing for perhaps this sort of thing happening. So then you can see on level 3. She is entering into a new period on November 9th, 2024. So Chris Brennan he does a whole excellent video on zodiac releasing, where he talks about, peak period doesn't necessarily mean like that's, or he talks about the 3 periods, how you have the period leading up to the peak period, where that can be a lot of action being taken, and then the peak period is really when things start taking off. So she's entering into a new period November 9th, right before a peak period on January 23rd, 2025. January 23rd is 3 days after the inauguration. So this to me paints a very clear picture of, what might happen for her. It's nerve-wracking to make a prediction, especially when the data very heavily correlates with what you kind of see happening. However, I really do believe that Kamala Harris will eventually win the election. I think that the results of this election, I can't remember back in 2020. I think it was about a week until we got the actual results of the election. And I am reporting to you from Pennsylvania, the state that decided the last election and, will most likely decide this election. So, it's nerve-wracking, all of everything that's happening in the world around us. But I really do think that, the astrology points in the direction of victory for Kamala Harris, not only from, my own predictive algorithm, but also from this ancient technique. So that is my little mini presentation.
That's wonderful. Thank you so very much. I have a couple. If anyone has questions in the audience or listeners, please just put it in the Q&A box. I have a couple thoughts and a couple of questions. So if I understand you correctly, I just want to reiterate what you were telling us. You're saying that when Biden won, despite the weaker nodal chart during the election of 2020, that the historical trend is when somebody wins with the weaker chart, they die in office or they step down in office. I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased that.
Yes, that was the case. I have my master document over there, which I will eventually share with the internet. But that was the case for JFK. That was the case for Abraham Lincoln. That was the case for FDR, who died in office. It was the case, I feel like there were several other, what was it, Polk? I can't remember who exactly off the top of my head, but I have it all written down in this master document. And when I made that discovery, I was in shock.
Yeah, I have almost an existential question, like a little go Yoda on us here. But like, what do you think that is about? And even Erika could chime in. I mean, like, we're talking about the fates look like they would decree the winner, like say in 2020 to be Trump, ironically stop the steal because maybe energetically, that was how the loser felt. Like I could feel the nose was telling me I was going to be the winner, blah, blah, blah. And then he didn't win. And then what is this thing that is the existential reason of the outliers on the bell curve or the cycle pattern breaks, that then that person who takes office, harm befalls them or a tragedy or death or illness? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I think that is, I've done a lot of pontificating on this, and who really knows, but the Saros cycle definitely, I think, is very predictive of our fate. And I think that, it's like, I think, Erika, you mentioned, we have fate and we have free will, and it's a combination of these two things. And I'm also a huge fan of Carl Jung, which kind of he talks a lot about, who you are, like discovering your shadow, discovering like who you are as a person. And I think that also has a lot to do with like the collective shadow. I mean, if we just look at presidents' charts in general, they have such a relationship with the North Node. And that was also something that I realized in my analysis of this, is that, through just looking at, especially FDR, his presidency is just fascinating when you look at the astrology of it. And his connection with the North Node and everything that happened in the United States in his life it just followed this very straight line when it has to do with the North Node. And when you look at Donald Trump's chart, that's not exactly the case. I mean, he was born during eclipse season. He has a very chaotic chart. He has very chaotic nature about him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's looking at the synastry, not only with the transiting chart and just looking at his chart, and also in synastry with the chart of the United States and the chart of the collective consciousness. I mean, that's really what I'm kind of getting at here, is that I think those things have potential to intervene in what you personally as an individual would see as your fate. And
Mm.
that's really the only explanation I have for like why these events occur, because who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I find it just a fascinating kind of really conundrum of that, destiny points in a direction and then there's a detour or something. Donald Trump has Regulus, on his ascendant, king, little king, fame, power, glory, etc. But they both have an algol placement, Harris and Trump. And Harris has algol on Jupiter, which is the ruler of her current peak cycle in her 12th house, in Taurus 12th house Jupiter, which is not a strong placement for Jupiter when you think of rulership. And then Trump, of course, with his midheaven. And they're both being activated by extraordinarily rare 84-year rare transit of Uranus over the midheaven, and even rarer when we had the Mars conjunction that goes back hundreds of years. I did the research. So even though they're both under this electric shock and cattle prod of Uranus on algol in intimate places in their chart, we saw Trump's assassination attempt. We'll see something else. It's just going to continue to destabilize him. It's for Kamala. This is actually working. This is where Kamala Harris came into her, ascendancy. It's like kind of ironic because Jupiter rules the peak periods of her lot of spirit.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting when you look at a lot of the transits to Kamala Harris's chart. Things that I was like concerned about, just her as a person, and what might unfold. I mean, they had the DNC, was it on the eclipse, or it was a really chaotic.
It was intense for her on August the 19th.
Well,
Yes, there's a
wasn't
big.
there a lot of conversation about a repeat, astrologically speaking, of what happened in '68, where the convention was in Chicago and it was awful and all of that, and that was a year which we referred to sort of as a time of martyrs, and that's why people were worried about her physical safety, which makes sense. I thought your presentation was really good. And like I said, I am not an astrologer, but I followed it. I thought it was really good. I'm really curious. You talk about shadow and these individual people's shadow, but also, I'm just really curious about the chart of the United States in regard to shadow. I mean, I believe that race is our biggest sin, our biggest wound, our most unexamined shadow piece. And that's why, I mean, when you look at the two candidates and you hear the ad hominem attacks going in one direction, and I think about my scales card, which is this back and forth thing. It's about, I'm curious, like, is this back and forth thing with these candidates and with the chart of the United States about whether the United States is still in process of deciding whether they want to examine that shadow, really look at it hard, and then be changed as a result, astrologically speaking.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done a I mean, I'm about to. One of the things that I'm about to look at is like 2025 specifically for the United States. And I've looked at the transiting chart. I haven't yet really done a super in-depth analysis of it in synastry with the United States chart. However, overall, I mean, as astrologers, we know four of the outer planets, like the four outer planets, are all moving into new signs. And I think that, I mean, for so many different reasons, it's going to be explosive. I don't like to use that word necessarily, explosive in the way that there's so many new things happening. Not to, give
Let's
insight
say,
here at all. However, I think that a lot of that, with Pluto and Aquarius and also Uranus and Gemini, it is just going to be new information, new ways of communicating, new ways of connecting, some that are going to be disruptive, some that with every transit, it's like, it's never just good or just bad, often.
Exactly.
Some things you can objectively look at and be like, well, that might not be so great. But I think that the way that we communicate and connect with each other, and kind of honestly, we're already seeing this, the internet has changed so much over just the last 5 years, just the last 3 years. And all of these new ideas are going to come rushing in. Of course, there is going to be pushback with that. But I'm seeing just a huge push towards new ideologies, a new future. I mean, even Neptune ingressing into Aries, the god of, ideology and faith and all of these, sort of like ethereal energies moving into Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, the pioneer. Is it going to be disruptive? Of course. When we look through history, it has led to disruptive events. However, eventually, it has led to change. And so, like I said, we have 4 planets. We have Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, and Pluto moving all into different signs. It's exciting. There's going to be lots of really disruptive things. It's like SJ was saying, or you were saying as well, like remaining like in the heart and remaining, in faith. That is going to be imperative.
And actually, when you think about that, I mean, it's like it's unknown to anyone alive today to live through this combination of shifts all at once. So I'm fully expecting a UFO thing, aliens coming in and chatting. We have a question. I just saw it come in, and it's by Lay. I just sorry, I just got me a little late getting it to you. She asked about 10 minutes ago. Have you tried your technique with the Sarocycle nodes? With JD Vance's chart, because her concern is, what if Trump dies and JD Vance somehow has to take the position of the, I don't know, the de facto, I suppose, running for office.
I think I tried to do this and I saw that we don't have a birth time for him, unless that has changed.
Yeah, we did. Someone called the records office and gave him 8:11 a.m. Another astrologer went and dug it up and got it right out of the records office. So we do have an 8:11, and he turns out to be a Leo rising.
Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have to
There we go. We got a new video for you to bring out, Reena. You're gonna try that one. Okay, let's see what happens. Great question, Lee. Or Lay, or Lee, however you say your name. I love that question. Yeah, I never thought of that. What happens if Trump has a heart attack? May not pass away. He might be incapacitated. And so someone else has to like sort of take over. I don't even know what the Republican Party would do in that case. It's never happened, right?
Yeah, and that was another thing that, I mean, so many astrologers are talking about, and psychics and tarot readers are saying they don't even see an election. And I mean, given the astrology that's happening right now, just in, the transiting chart right now, it's wild. We have all these planets in the late degrees of the signs. So anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
And remember, we've talked about at one point about a year ago, I was on a podcast and I saw 2 women running for the position. I saw neither of the principals at the time move, in there. And so it's just in terms of the Vance thing, you're right. This has never happened before, but there's no law that says Vance now steps up as the nominee. And in fact, who had the second most votes in the convention? It was Nikki Haley.
Yeah, and I did the same. I saw 2 women too.
Yeah, so we both saw 2 women. So, anything can happen.
Guys, maybe we live in interesting times. Wait, isn't that a curse? Oh goodness gracious! I think we lost signal for Christina. So she was going to do the minor asteroids. So I'll just patch her in an editing job on this video. We're going to finish up though, so we can all get off to our breakfast or whatever you guys are time zone wise doing. I will put the links in the description box and in the pinned comments to both of your channels on YouTube, of course, and SJ Anderson's, and all your website links and information as well. But I really appreciate that you guys took the time today to like spend the time with this little election panel. I think it's going to be a really good information set for people to learn why we say what we say, whether we're using an oracle called the LeNormand deck or we're using astrology. We don't just make it up. We have a logic to it, right? Yeah. Thanks, Reena. Reena, I'd love to have you back on my channel another time. I think you're absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So let's keep in touch, please. Okay. And of course, Erika, you as well. And I'm a Canadian, guys. I'm the Canadian on the sidelines with my popcorn. So okay, we'll see you guys in the YouTube land. Thanks for being here.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.